Hey everyone, it is Tuesday and we are back at it with these landscape paintings up here in Northwest Michigan. And today I'm going to be painting a really similar painting to what I did yesterday. Only the time of day is different. The quality of light has changed a lot from what yesterday's painting was. And so the whole experience of this is going to feel really fresh, even though it's the same content and the same kind of scene. So let's get to it. Let's paint. All right, so today's painting, I am actually in a really similar location to what I was yesterday. It's a different time of day. Right now, it's like mid-afternoon, and the light is just totally different than it was on Monday's painting, where it was early morning light, a lot more flat, a little bit of hint of this warm light coming up from the east as the sun was rising. Today, the sun is just high in the sky. There's a kind of flat, direct, strong light. Sometimes the sun was behind clouds, and sometimes I was just getting direct sunlight, and the colors really came out strong at that point. So my view is really similar, except I'm a little bit further away than I was yesterday, and I'm a little bit also closer to the water. And I was able to do that because there's this sort of built-up area on the beach with all these rocks that prevent this area of the shoreline from washing away. Mostly because there's like a park and a parking lot nearby me, and they have all these rocks right there to protect all of those structures. So I was able to go out further and closer to the water and have a little bit of a stronger angle looking at Empire Bluffs. So I'm getting a little bit more of the face of the dunes in this view. And I actually think this view of recording the video is just so trippy. I feel like I'm in some kind of weird 80s music video or something where there's like this shape right in the middle of the composition. Something's happening there, but then on the edges, you just have this like endless view of waves coming in towards you. It's sort of just a trippy thing. I didn't intend for the video to look so strange and surreal like this. I'm in some kind of like landscape dreamscape as I'm painting. You just see these unending waters all behind me. But that's what the view was. That's how I set up the camera today, and it's kind of fun. I'm actually enjoying just seeing this view of the painting happening. So the color of the water is really different than it was in the morning on yesterday's painting. Right now, it's a lot more of a kind of dull aqua with some colors of that, almost the sand color coming through while the waves are coming towards us. And you'll see that as I start painting more of the water and that. But also today's painting was a little bit more challenging because a lot more people were wanting to come over and say hi. There was a ton of families around. And also I was there with my own family. So I had my two girls hanging out and Katie was there. We're all at the beach. So I was having to kind of stop and take little breaks, bounce Ceci around, try to calm her down. At one point in the painting, I put on the baby ergo and was wearing Cecily as I'm trying to paint. So it was just like a lot to juggle as I'm doing this painting. But another thing I loved about this view was that the dunes off in the distance were a little more obvious from this view. It didn't just look like some kind of low hanging clouds near the horizon line. But in this situation, it looked a lot more like dunes, just further away and really taking on atmospheric perspective and taking on the color of the sky. Another thing that happens when you're landscape painting that can be really challenging is actually fighting the wind. And in this situation, the wind was actually really intense at certain points. Like it almost blew over my easel, which was super difficult to do. I'm using a different easel actually for these paintings. I still have my pochade box. I'm just using it as a palette, and that's what I had my camera hooked up on, this tripod that I had my camera on one end of the tripod and my pochade box on the other end. It's kind of a crazy setup, but it's working all right. And then I have this Italian steel easel next to that tripod. And I love this Italian steel easel. I haven't used them enough, and I really need to use them more because you can get the painting right up at eye level so much easier than you can with a pochade box. So one of the reasons why I love this kind of easel so much is that you can really easily do a sight-size painting. So how this works in this situation is that you paint what you see at the exact same scale you see it. And since you can have the painting right at your eye level, the most common strategy is to envision a sort of floating invisible frame directly to the right or left of your panel or the painting surface that is the exact same scale as the painting surface. And it makes the drawing process way easier because all you really need to do is flick your eye from the subject, from the view that you're looking at to paint, and then right to your canvas. And you can also do horizontal alignment really easily. All you have to do is hold your brush horizontally and it gives you all of these lines to line up. And you can also use the edges of the canvas superimposed over the view to kind of click things to the edge and to make the view just sit perfectly on the composition where you want it to fit. So that's how I'm painting these paintings this week. I'm doing them all sight size. I'm not enlarging the image or I'm not shrinking the image down. I'm just doing a straight up sight size view. And to be honest, one of the painters that I love to follow, a painter who's alive and working right now, making fantastic, beautiful paintings, is Mark D'Alessio. He's a painter who grew up in California and he moved out to Italy. I think he studied in Florence and ended up just staying in Europe and has lived in different areas. I believe he lived in Paris for a while. He's lived in different areas of Italy. I think he lived in somewhere in Eastern Europe for a little while, and I believe he's back in Italy now. But Mark travels all over the place and just does these sort of painting trips where he'll go to a new location and paint for a couple weeks there, make a bunch of paintings. He'll paint a couple paintings a day. And he does this sight size method. And I learned it from him actually probably back when I was just getting out of undergrad. And he was putting up YouTube videos explaining some of his process. I think he was calling them 1-minute painting videos or something, where he would explain some kind of technical thing. Like one of the videos was about sight size. One of the videos was about using a black mirror or using a mirror while painting. Another video was about how to grind your own paint, how to grind lead white paint. Another one was about like using this kind of bone to sand down the texture of the surface of an oil painting so that it's easier to get back into that painting the second session. So yeah, Mark had all these amazing tips. I love following him on Instagram. He just seems to have this amazing life where he just travels around and paints different landscapes. And that's all it seems like he does. He paints landscapes, sells them. A lot of them are small. Sometimes he does large scale landscapes in the field. He'll do some kind of a mixture of a working process of doing little oil sketches and then doing a larger painting either in the studio or even outside in the landscape. And I think he's just one of the best landscape painters alive right now. A lot of people would totally disagree with me and think it's absurd that I thought he was one of the best landscape painters alive right now. But for the kind of landscape painting that I'm really fascinated by, a more natural approach, a more approach that is color focused, not so much about trying to project your own vision on the landscape, but instead working with what's in front of you and painting what you see, painting the beauty that's in front of you that is so impossible for humans to recreate. Like, humans will never win. The landscape, nature is so much more beautiful and full of so much more beautiful design and creativity, and there's just so much to work with. I mean, I do think that there's a lot of improvement that can happen when you are looking at a view and you're painting from life and you say, okay, I'm going to shift some things around to create a better design for a landscape painting because the view that I am working with just isn't good enough. And I think Mark actually does that a lot. He'll, move little things around to make a better composition and improve on the view that is in front of him. But he's not doing things like changing all the colors to some kind of bright neons or just shifting everything around and doing anything kind of crazy with what's in front of him. He's more of a sort of servant to the landscape, or you could even say an advocate for the landscape. And I think landscape painters throughout history have actually played a huge role in preserving the environment and creating a lot of the national parks that are in the US. For example, there's a painter near my hometown in northern Indiana. Right along the shoreline, you get that little corner of northwest Indiana that is right up against the Lake Michigan shoreline, and that's where the Indiana dunes are. And there was a painter who lived in the dunes and was a huge advocate for the dunes named Frank Dudley. He's not that well known in the rest of the United States, but in the Midwest and around the Chicagoland area, and especially around the Indiana dunes, he's really well known because he was the one who helped get the protection to create the state park, which then recently became one of the national parks. And he showed people the value of the landscape through making paintings of it. And I thought that was just such a beautiful way to protest a sort of industrialization that was happening in that area. If you know a little bit about the history of the south tip of Lake Michigan, there's all these steel mills, oil mills, and they were overtaking that whole shoreline. And they're still here to this day. There's a lot of mills there. But if it weren't for people like Frank Dudley and other people who were like, oh my gosh, you're going to totally destroy this beautiful landscape, we need to protect it, it would have just been gone because there would have been all these mills all over the beach and the shoreline. The beauty of that landscape would have just been erased. So thanks to painters like Frank Dudley and even, photographers, other artists who traveled around and showed Americans the beauty of the American landscape, we have things like the national parks. We have things like state parks and protections that keep businesses and big industries from overtaking those landscapes that are beautiful treasures for us that we really need to protect. So I love that kind of picture in my mind of the landscape painter as almost prophet to other people, to their community. They show people the beauty that's around them. They're not showing them through telling them anything, but they're actually showing them, like, I'm going to make a painting of this and show you how beautiful this is. And just look at it and pay attention to this beauty that's around you. And don't take it for granted. Artists are just so good at doing that. They're just fantastic at showing people the beauty in their everyday surroundings that they otherwise would just completely take for granted. So by the end of this painting, I don't know if you can tell, but the wind has really picked up. And it's funny in this kind of situation when the wind picks up so much, you can't really continue to paint the same way that you normally would paint. So for me, normally in a landscape setting, I want to hold my brush a little bit more loosely and let the tip of the brush do the work for me. And I don't want to grip the brush really tightly or anything. I want to kind of keep a looseness to my pose, stay really calm, and just let the paint flow onto the surface. But when the wind picks up so much, you have to have braced yourself in some kind of way, either by putting your pinky down on the canvas and really getting a lot more control on your brushwork or something. So you can't relax so much in that sort of situation. And that's a challenging thing to work with. And the landscape just continually presents challenges like that to you as you're painting out in plein air, as you're painting out, doing a Premier Coupe painting and trying to paint on location. It's always going to fight against you, and all of the things that you can do comfortably in a studio just seem really difficult out in the landscape. Maybe it's the light is just changing every couple minutes, or the wind is just insane and really wanting to push over all of your equipment, or it starts to rain, or anything like that. And actually, you probably couldn't tell in this painting, but a little bit in the beginning, it was actually raining, and I would say for about 10 or 15 minutes, I was just getting a light rain. And that is actually not nearly as bad as a really intense wind. Because when you are in a really strong windy situation and your equipment just wants to blow away, there's no way you can even paint. It's just so difficult. But rain, it's a lot more doable. And I'm working with oils, so water and oil don't mix very well. I kind of disagree that you can't really paint in a deluge or a really intense downpour, because the surface just gets too wet and then the oil actually doesn't want to adhere at that point. But this was not that situation. It was just a light sprinkle of rain that was coming through. So that was today's painting, the similar view to yesterday, but the light was very different. The quality of atmosphere felt really different. The color of the water was grabbing and absorbing light in a totally different way than it was yesterday morning. So I thought it was worth just setting up in a really similar place and making another painting of the same content, but from a little bit of a different vantage point with a very different quality of light. So I will see you all tomorrow, and we'll continue painting this Northwest Michigan landscape up here at Sleeping Bear Dunes. So take it easy, everyone. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.